There's a rather curious little book out there. It's not a story in the way we usually think of one. Instead, it's a collection of letters. These are not letters between lovers, or friends, or even family. No, these are letters from a senior demon, a creature named Screwtape, to his young nephew Wormwood. This nephew is just starting out in the family business. And what is that business? The subtle and patient damnation of a human soul. The human is called the patient, and Wormwood's job is to steer him gently, ever so gently, away from the light and into their master's darkness. It's a fascinating and, frankly, a rather chilling look into the mind of evil. Screwtape is a manager, you see, an undersecretary in the vast grey bureaucracy of hell. He writes with a dry, almost corporate wit, offering advice on the best methods for temptation. He scolds Wormwood for his youthful mistakes, his eagerness for some grand, spectacular sin. Screwtape knows better. He understands that the road to ruin is not a sudden cliff dive. It is a gentle slope, one you barely notice you are on until you find you can no longer climb back up. His letters reveal a strategy that is less about fire and brimstone and more about the quiet, persistent whispers that lead a good man astray, one tiny step at a time. One of the most shocking lessons Screwtape teaches is that grand, dramatic sins are often less effective than small, everyday failings. The junior tempter, Wormwood, is always hoping his patient will commit some spectacular evil. But his uncle constantly reminds him that this is amateur thinking. Why risk a big, obvious sin that might shock the human into repentance? It is far more strategic to let him indulge in tiny bits of selfishness, slight impatience, a small recurring habit of unkindness. These are the things that don't set off any alarms. They feel normal, even forgivable. No one thinks their soul is in peril because they were a little grumpy before their morning coffee. This strategy is what Screwtape calls leading a man down the safest road to hell, the gradual one. Think of it like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it at first. You just keep driving. Everything gets a little harder, a little less responsive. Small habits of thought and action can slowly change a person's character. The little lie, the moment of spite, the choice to procrastinate on a kind deed. These are Wormwood's greatest tools. Tiny threads woven over time create a rope that binds the soul to darkness. The patient is never asked to become a monster at once. He's nudged to be slightly worse each day. Distraction is another key tactic. Keep his mind filled with noise, with worry, the endless stream of immediate concerns. The goal, prevent any quiet reflection about the big questions. It is a truly devilish trick to take something good and corrupt it from the inside. Screwtape explains this with great delight. He advises Wormwood to take the patient's newfound humility and twist it into a source of pride. Imagine the man finally realizing he is not the center of the universe. This is a dangerous moment for hell. Wormwood is taught to whisper, "My, you are becoming very humble." Suddenly the man starts thinking about his own humility. He becomes proud of it. Just like that, the virtue is gone, replaced by a particularly ugly form of pride. The very act of being good becomes a reason to feel superior to others. This same method can be applied to almost any human virtue. Sense of justice becomes self-righteousness. Charity becomes control. Charity becomes feeling good about yourself. Charity stops being a genuine act of love. Religious devotion can be twisted. Focus on spirituality becomes a vague internal feeling rather than real-world action. Even suffering, which we often see as a great evil, can be a problem for the tempters. War, pain, these turn minds to ultimate realities. Faced with mortality, people ask about life, death, and what comes next. This is terribly inconvenient for hell. Demons prefer prosperity. Demons prefer comfort. Comfortable, healthy, untroubled. Easier to convince that this life is all there is. In the end, all of hell's elaborate schemes have one great vulnerability. Something they can analyze but never truly understand. That vulnerability is love. Screwtape speaks of it with contempt and confusion. He cannot comprehend why the enemy would grant humans free will and then love them unconditionally, regardless of how they use that freedom. This genuine, selfless love, seeking the good of another without asking for anything in return, is like a shield their weapons cannot penetrate. When the patient experiences this, from God or from others, Wormwood's influence wanes. Real relationships built on this love are a constant threat. The patient's journey is one of quiet victory. Despite Wormwood's efforts, the man grows in faith. He has his ups and downs, moments of doubt and periods of spiritual laziness. He is, in other words, completely normal. But through it all, he keeps making small choices for the good. He chooses to pray when he doesn't feel like it, to be kind when irritated, and to forgive when he'd rather hold a grudge. These are not heroic acts, but the small, unseen decisions that, day by day, shape a human soul. And in the end, they lead him safely home. It reminds us that every moment matters and that even in the quietest corners of our lives, we have the power to choose the light.